Hi, this is Rachel from the Dotting Center. Here is part 2 of the 3-part tutorial video showing how to paint this Torus mandala painting using dotting tools and techniques. There's a PDF download that you can get in my Etsy shop if you'd like to print it out and paint along with the video. All the links are down below. So here's where we left off, part 1. We had just finished dotting those blue drop shapes, and now we're starting to work into those blue petal sections. So those drop shapes were made with ultramarine blue, and now I am switching to cerulean blue using my stylus tool to walk the dots around the bottom edge of those drop shapes. So here we're going to add another row, and this is after adding just a tiny bit of white. So with each row of dots that I just add a tiny bit of white. This keeps the blues all within the same color family, and it gives a nice gradient effect. So at this point, I decide to come in from the sides. So I'm making larger dots on the edges and working my way into a smaller dot in the center. So for the center of this petal shape, I'm going to use a big light blue dot right in the middle. Now using that same light blue color, I'm going to walk the dots from the top of the shape down to the bottom. So this dotting effect that you get with walking the dots, where the dots are large when you start and then they tend to taper off to smaller dots at the end, this happens with stylus tools. When you use a silicone pointed tool, the effect is much different. A silicone pointed tool tends to make dots that are all relatively the same size. So this is bigger walking of the dots with a lighter blue, just added white. Okay, so now's a good time to use my stylus tool to get a drop shape. So you really load up the top of your stylus and then draw like you would a line on the canvas. You can actually hear it on the canvas as you pull the paint out. This definitely takes some practice to get used to, which is why I always try to use paper before I go on to canvas, just to get the effect right. So this is what has worked for me. I found that timing is important with this. So when you first place that stylus tip on the canvas, that first little dot, you want to spend just a couple more seconds there before you pull the paint out. So now I added white, and I'm going to put 2 drop shapes on either side just to fill in that triangular shape right there. And I have to laugh because Carrie from New South Artistry on Instagram You should check out her feed. She does really cool work, but she said those look like sloth claws, which I have to agree. I can't stop thinking they're sloth claws now. But yeah, so that's kind of cute. You can always add a little bit of sloth to your painting, right? Okay, so here's yet another technique on how to get those drop shapes. This time I'm using a large dotting rod and a pointed silicone tool. And you'll notice here how much paint is actually applied to the canvas. It's quite a bit. And that just helps draw out the paint into that drop shape. So the thing that helped me here was I used a lot of paint on that first dot. Right when I thought I had enough, I just added a little bit more because it helps to bring out that point shape a little bit farther. The more paint that you have there, the longer you can get that drop to pull out. Okay, so fast forward a couple rows, I just kept adding white and walked the dots for a few rows out. And now I'm just adding a big cerulean dot with two little tiny ones side by side. I think that one adds emerald. See how there's a little bit more of a green tint? So I'm kind of transitioning from that blue into a turquoise and then into a green for this petal. So now you want to walk the dots around that center dot. Adding some tiny dots next to big ones is nice for contrast. I like doing that. So here's another drop shape, and of all the Arteza colors so far, this one is my absolute favorite. This is emerald green, and I'm just in love with this color. It's so pretty. It's so nice. I'm not really sure. I don't know if that's emerald though. I feel like it could be jade or something, but it doesn't look like emerald to me, but I don't care. Honestly, they could call it whatever, and I would still think it was just the prettiest shade. So yeah. So now I'm using two drop shapes on either side, just using one tool, using the stylus tool. And that just adds a little bit more of a decorative flourish. Continuing to fill that shape with light green dots. So some of you might notice that I'm using dirty tools, and it might make some of you cringe, but I can tell you that I love dotting, but I hate washing my tools, and it's just something that I do maybe once a month. But these tools I've had for years, and it's part of me testing them out. Honestly, I want to have a tool that's going to last a while and get a lot of use, and so I use these tools because I want quality in my store, and that's really important to me. So yeah, they're dirty, but they work. Okay, so now we're coming to a really extra large drop shape using the pink dotting rod. And basically you throw down a dot, you come in with your largest 1/4 inch flat silicone tool, and you just shape a triangle shape at the top of the drop. You just move the paint where you want it to go, and it's that easy. And the thing I love about this is, if you tried to do this with a brush, you would have different diameter circles. It would be really, really hard to get the same exact shape, 16 different times on your canvas. So using this rod is a really easy way to get a drop and have it work and look right. Okay, so here I'm using my pointed silicone tool to make the dots around this shape. Now you'll notice this is very different than using a stylus tool, because a stylus tool will give you very different shaped dots. So the silicone tool can keep all the dots relatively the same size, and I find that if I load it up really well, I can get more dots and go for a longer line without having to reload. And yeah, this has to be one of my favorite silicone tools to use, is this pointed silicone. Also, one of the best things about these tools is they're double-sided. So you have one side that is a silicone tool and the other side is a stylus tool. So it's like getting two sets of tools in one. And you can tell by this next row, you can see the difference between the stylus dots. See how they vary in size? They kind of have a large dot and then it moves down to a smaller dot. Where with the silicone pointed tool, it all kind of stays uniform, which is nice. Okay, so here's the next day. Overnight, everything is dry, but you can see the paint still looks wet. It's nice and shiny. I love this paint. Okay, so for the next section, I decided to make a circle that kind of divides that next set of petals, so that I have a guideline to place my dots. Now what I did was I used a pendant for the center, just because I didn't want to poke a hole right in the center dot. And yeah, that seemed to work. So adding circles for the edges, and that'll come in handy later. All right, so see, that's where that dot ended up. Now I'm going to add another drop using a rod and that flat silicone tool. So here it is in actual speed. You can see how much paint is applied, and then I just use that flat edge of the silicone tool to drag it out. And again, the more paint that you put down, the longer you can extend the point on that shape. Okay, so with that, we're coming to the end of part 2, and we're transitioning into part 3. I hope you learned something from this video. I hope you liked it. And if you did, leave a comment. Let me know. Give me some feedback. Is there anything that you would like to see in future videos, or is there anything that you feel could be covered more? Let me know, and don't forget, if you want the PDF pattern, go to Etsy and download it. it would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. See you in part 3.